it gives them kind of the lay of the land in terms of where to start speaking to the student about their work. I like how Anjali always she always talks about the poster board, and it's her and her poster, and how color is not really great and flashy stuff is not great. And I think there was a young man who mentioned why he chose red as his background, because everything popped off of it and it matched the black lettering nicely. Believe it or not, kids actually think a lot about that. There's been a big movement lately in blue. Everybody wants to do something with blue. I guess blue has a calming effect on the brain or something, so I guess if you look at something blue, you kind of like it, so they think that they're going to somehow get an edge that if my poster is blue. But she does make a very good point that the poster board is important, and they spend a lot of time developing it and making sure that it represents them and represents them well for when the judges come through. I have not gone to ISEF, so George Baldo ended up retiring from Ward Melville, and he's probably floating around Port Jeff right now, someplace laughing. But he's in retirement, so he couldn't be here tonight. But he retired 5 years ago, so I've been to ISEF with my students, but we have not had the honor of going to ISEF. I know the COMAC team goes to ISEF, and I call them a team. You notice how I say that, the COMAC team? I think I've said team a couple of times. This is really, it's interesting that we just, we finished up the World Series, and I was a little bit sad last night because I kind of wanted Los Angeles to pull it out, just because I want the series to go 7 games, because I'm a big baseball fan, and I just like watching it, because these guys are at the top of their game, right? And this is really in the same vein, and the comments at the end of the movie where they talk about priorities in this country being a little bit misguided possibly, and how we give so much credence to people who, I don't know, maybe don't deserve as much credit as they're getting, or that we kind of gear ourselves towards celebrity in a different way. This is really where the celebrity is at in terms of the kids. So doing this project, and so it's just it's a wonderful thing. I don't know if you want to add anything. You're all looking at me.
Does anyone have any questions about the song?
Well, we have a question up here.
Yeah. It's a scientist. Here you go. Thank you.
Does Port Jeff usually make it to ISEF? Are they good in the science fair program?
Well, every school is good at science, and every kid is good at science. So that's one thing that you have to remember. And you have to remember that one of the things for young students is that you're all naturally scientists, right? I mean, some of these projects that kids were doing, you're probably looking at that and thinking, how could I have built that in my basement? Or even, I don't have a basement, how can I do this? So one of the things that you younger kids need to do is you need to live your lives every day and just be curious about the things that you see and ask questions. And when you finally get your cell phone, don't glue your face to your cell phone. Look up from your cell phone once in a while, because there's a lot going on in the world. And ask questions, and ask your parents why things are. And if they don't know, then try to find out. And the more you're curious, and the more you pay attention to what's around you, that's what being a scientist is. So one of the take-home messages at the end of the film is about the journey and the process that the students go through to get to that. So Port Jeff is a small school, but you are right smack dab in the middle of everything. You're right by Stony Brook. You're not that far from Brookhaven, and you can even do things in your own school that might qualify for a science fair. The simplest question is the best question. And one of the things that we do with our sophomores is we try to get them to develop very simple in-house projects that they can do, where they don't have to go to a university, something that they could do literally on their kitchen window if they wanted to. And a lot of times the kids come and they think, I want to build a Mars rover that's better than the one they already built, or I want to simulate the atmosphere on the Jupiter moon, and I want to see if methanogens can grow there. And they have wonderful ideas, and they are shooting for the moon, which is what you want kids to do. But then to have them take ideas and crystallize them down into something that's very simple. So a simple question, and it is usually the most elegant question. So just keep asking questions, and if you're interested, I know a guy right over there. No, I think you know him too.
I wanted to address you and answer for you for that question. One of my takeaways from this film was that anyone who wants to get there can. You saw the two children in Brazil that came all the way, came from Poor Village and managed to get to the science fair. So even if you're in Port Jeff, which doesn't have a program like Ward Melville, if you want to go to LISAP and INSEP, you can get there. Because you find yourself a mentor, like the girl in South Dakota, and if you put your mind to it, you can go to the science fair as well.
I think that's also the biggest thing, just don't be shy. Even though a couple of the kids talk about being shy, oh, I'm kind of shy, they're shy, yes, and that, you know, she's not going, the one girl from South Dakota was talking about not going to the dance. So it's not a matter of, you know, you have to do science or have friends. It's not like there's that give or take. You don't have to give up friends and having a normal school life to do science. But my advice would be don't keep your ideas to yourself. If you really want to try something, then talk to somebody. Talk to your parents, talk to your teachers at school. And they may not be able to help you directly, but they may be able to pass on your information to someone else who can help you and would be willing to. The thing about scientists in general is that we've all been at that spot where we were, you know, nobody at the moment who needed somebody at the moment, and so we tend to want to give back. And many scientists who are running their own labs are extremely busy, and unfortunately grant money is tighter than it's ever been. And so, you know, in many regards, PIs who are running major labs are writing a lot of grants, but they will always bring people into the lab who are interested and who want to come in. When you get to be, I think we have to be 16, and then you can work in a lab. But you can do stuff prior to that. So.
We have a question over here.
Roughly how many people from the U.S. usually get in?
I don't know. Comac left. Look at me, I just turned to them to look for the numbers. Okay, so just about every state in the United States has a state science fair. And then different states will have regional science fairs. So New York State has a couple of different regions. There's a couple of different regions upstate. And then we have Long Island down here. And there's also a fair called NICEF, which is the New York State Science and Engineering Fair. But here's the rub. The one thing that is frustrating for a teacher. So right now I have 24 seniors in my program. I started with 50. When they were an incoming class of sophomores, there were 50 of them. They turned into about 36 as juniors, and now I've settled with 24. So it's not for everybody. You come into the program and, you know, you learn things that you maybe are kind of like, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, but at least you find out something about yourself as a student. We also have a strong robotics program at Ward Mobile, so a lot of the kids who like to do hands-on engineering stuff, they tend to gravitate towards our robotics program and our mechatronics. But every state has a science fair. So I would imagine that every state at least sends a couple of representatives, and I think it may even be based on population. So the girl from South Dakota, she may have been the only one to go from South Dakota because the population of South Dakota is not that large. New York sends more, and Long Island sends its own group because we're so heavily populated down here. So that's a good question, but it is international. So back in the day, if you remember people talking pre-2015 about, Intel, my kid's gonna do Intel, that was what was shorthand for the Intel Science Talent Search, which was run by the Society for Science in the Public, which is a non-for-profit organization out of Washington. That is the same group that sponsors LISAP and ISEF. And the nice part about the movie, it shows that little clip about post-World War II, and that's really where it all started. And prior to it being called Intel, it was called Westinghouse. Right. Westinghouse was the original corporate sponsor. They did it for, I feel like 30 or 40 years. Then Intel, people that make the little Intel chip inside, whatever, they became the corporate sponsor for 10 years. And just recently, Regeneron Pharmaceuticals has become the third corporate sponsor, and they've signed on to a 10-year promise So the science